The schools in certain parts of the U.S. are reopening. In New York, for example, they've been delayed. What do we know about schools reopening and safety?
We're seeing that there is a correlation, and I think a lot of people are trying to study just how strong that effect is on schools reopening in local clusters, particularly when you think of schools with older children and with adults, so colleges, universities, high schools, things like that. One of the biggest challenges is making sure that the teachers and the family members are safe. And so we don't want schools to be driving clusters in towns and communities where they've gotten the virus under control. So this is particularly challenging when you have a place like a university or a college that's bringing people from other states, other communities that may have large outbreaks. And so we're seeing these outbreaks pop up in many places where schools are not taking the virtual approach.
So what does that mean, Lauren? I mean, if you're, to keep, I guess, citizens safe, do you need to close restaurants and bars, but, keep the schools open so that you don't have to close anything, everything at once where cases to really surge? Yeah,
I mean, it sort of seems like in the United States we've chosen to keep bars and restaurants open over being able to open our schools. And so when the first step to being able to open schools safely is to stop community transmission, so that when you have to do the contact tracing associated with small clusters or outbreaks or even single cases in the schools, that you can actually track where the infections are coming from and track where the transmission is coming and going. And that's really hard to do when you have ongoing community transmission, and we do know that these bars and restaurants are part of what's driving community transmission. So, the idea is that you limit the activities that don't need to happen, going out to bars, going out to restaurants, and then it's safer to open the schools.
Lauren, where I am here in New York, I had to wear a sweater to work this morning. Summer is definitely over. Fall is coming. What happens when, A, people can't spend as much time outdoors and have to go indoors, and B, that collides with the regular flu season?
Yeah, we're really concerned about that sort of intersection towards the end of fall. You hope that everyone can sort of stay outside and be outside for as long as possible, but it has impact in a lot of places. So you're going to have mixing of people in smaller spaces, confined spaces, where they may have gone outside. If they don't limit their activity, then they're just going to do those activities inside. Same with bars and restaurants. So if people can't go to bars and restaurants, but they're allowed to remain open and they can't sit outside, perhaps they'll sit inside. We have seen that in some places that have flu early, like in Australia, the cases are lower, which is great to see. It means that a lot of the activities that we're doing for coronavirus are helping to sort of quell the spread of flu as well. And we would expect that to an extent. I think we're hoping that happens here too, that we have a very light flu season, because the challenge with having flu season and coronavirus, first, we don't know that co-infection may cause worse disease. It may cause people to get sicker. But also, it's really hard to differentiate on a quick screen in the emergency department, for example, between coronavirus symptoms and flu symptoms. So we want to keep people out of the hospitals who have flu. We want to, keep those beds open for coronavirus cases and keep people separated as well.
Right. Very good point. I just quickly want to touch on treatment. The debate over convalescent plasma and its efficacy continuing to rage. You had the NIH weighing in yesterday saying there's no evidence to prove that it actually works. What do we know and what don't we know at this point?
So convalescent plasma has been used in a lot of approaches to a lot of different diseases. So I think we can say we know it's relatively safe. Even in COVID, we've seen that the safety data look pretty good. We don't know much about its efficacy. We're still learning a lot. One of the challenges with moving forward with the approach that's happening now is it may diminish the people who are willing to sign up for clinical trials. So then it becomes limited how much we can actually learn about its efficacy. And so you don't want to just do something just because it's safe. You want to take convalescent plasma only if it's also effective in treating and curing coronavirus. And in the current situation, we've had several negative studies that haven't showed that efficacy, that it's working yet. And my hope is that people continue down the path of doing the randomized control trials, doing that rigorous clinical study so that we don't just rely on observational data, which can be fraught with different biases, different problems with the study design, and that sort of retrospective look back at the data can be problematic when you're making those assessments about how effective it really was.
Lauren, who will have the formula for a vaccine that will be, of easy access and distributable first? How far away are we from that?
So I think there's a lot of work going into the vaccine piece right now. There's, I think, 4 in phase 3 trials. In the U.S. here, we have 2 studies, one by Moderna and one by Pfizer and BioNTech. And so, the goal is to enroll somewhere around 30,000 participants. There's been talk of stopping those early, but the key is to get to that point where we've had enough COVID infections in that study population that we can understand the efficacy of the virus. And so I think some people are predicting that we'll have one by the end of the year. I'm slightly less optimistic. I think sometime next year we'll probably see some really good vaccine data that allows us to push forward. There's work being done on who gets it, right? So that's going to be the next big hurdle, is how do we prioritize that vaccine that works really well, and who do we give it to?
Thank you so much.